Hi, I'm Siobhan Sarna, and I'm the founder of SIBO SOS and the book Healing SIBO. If you don't have it already and you're trying to figure out your SIBO, your EMO, your IBS, definitely recommend it. It's what I wish I had had 5 years ago. It's on sale on Amazon, good reviews. If you've already read it and you liked it, please do leave a good review because thanks, Carla. Leave a review on Amazon. It really helps to get your book like shown more in the feed and helps other people know that they're spending their 15 to 20 bucks, depending if they get it on sale. Thanks, Carla. That they're going to be in good hands. I feel very good about this book. I love it. I love it. This really, I'm so proud of this. This is how I started this whole project. I wanted to write a book because I knew I was finding out like secret information that I wish I had known, and like, why doesn't everyone know this? And I was mad. And basically what happened was I was able to do summits more easily since I'm a TV person. And then I took all the information I learned in the summits and I put them into the book. That's way oversimplification, but there it is. And Krishnan is here. Kiran is here, and I'm promoting you to a panelist, Kiran. And oh, thanks. I'm glad you like the book too, Joanne. It means a lot. Hi, everyone. Okay. Kiran, are you with me? Yes, you are.
Yes.
Boom.
We did it again. Yes.
Oh, I've started with no mic on. It's been great. So we're good. Phone is off and we are hot. Okay, everyone. Look, I sent out an email misspelling my clever word microbiologist today. Like whatever.
I saw that and I just thought it was something clever that you did.
I did, because microbiologist is clever and cute. And so
I like it.
Kiran, but then I misspelled it. Moving on. Here is Kiran Krishnan, who is a microbiologist, who is a microbiologist, a word I made up, but it's true, because not all microbiologists are experts in the microbiome. He is the co-founder of Microbiome Labs. He is one of the leaders in educating other researchers, doctors, clinicians in the microbiome. And yes, he has a very special set of spores that he can work with. And since they were purchased by Novozymes, they now have enzymes, the largest manufacturer of enzymes in the world, and they have over 1,000 spores that they can work with. So this is very exciting times. And as a result of this infusion, I'm just talking to like you're not here. One more thing is that there's a new product I'm stoked about, which is the vitamin D K2. I don't even have a bottle yet, but I know about these formulations because the woman who helps me, Carolyn Ladowski, with my DNA, who's out of Australia, wanted me to do more vitamin D, Karen. And she was like, get this special form. And she said, in the United States, it's hard to find. You have to have a prescription for it. And I was like, what? So tell us about this special form and tell us why we need to be paying attention to these, and hello and welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. It's always awesome to be here with you. On this number of strains, incidentally, I was just in Berlin a couple of weeks ago, which is one of our big research facilities next to Copenhagen, and we have one in Davis, California, and so on. And I learned that we actually have 147,000 probiotic strains in our library that are characterized, that are deposited, that are being screened and worked on. And out of those 147,000, we have about 3,600 spore strains. So we have an immense library, and, we're working on really exciting things like, we're working on a probiotic to break down BPA and microplastics in your body. Because we know we're all loaded with these microplastics. So, and we have a candidate bacteria already. So lots of exciting things. Now back to, if we think about K2 is actually one of my earliest passions, and maybe in large part of the reason why I got into the natural health space. And again, it comes back to the spores, right? So because K2 in its most highest natural concentration is actually made by bacillus spores. And the food that houses the highest amounts of K2 is natto, which is a fermented soybean. And it has two really big active ingredients in it. One is vitamin K27 at very high doses, 600 to 800 micrograms per day. And then nattokinase being a fibrinolytic anti-inflammatory enzyme. So those are the two main components of it. I started out in the enzyme business with a Japanese enzyme company. And so I was working quite heavily on nattokinase, then discovered this vitamin K2 as part of the nattokinase production, and then became really dedicated to isolating and manufacturing vitamin K2 in particular. Vitamin K2, and of course, we'll talk about D3 as well, and why you combine the two and why we finally come up with this product. Number one, it's important to note that vitamin K27 is the quintessential dietary supplement, right? Because the intent of dietary supplements from the get-go was to supplement in critical nutrients that are absolutely important to health and wellness that you don't get adequate amounts of in your diet, right? That's the whole premise of the dietary supplement industry. And that's why dietary supplements are generally categorized as foods, because they're kind of enhanced food ingredients to supplement your diet because you don't get all the nutrients you need from your diet. Vitamin K27 is exactly one of those, because the richest natural sources of it, and in fact, the only natural sources of it, are fermented products like natto, which nobody in the US and North America eats. And then there are certain types of fermented cheeses in Northern Europe, which nobody here eats. And then organ meat. In organ meat, you can get a version of K2 called K24. And in organ meat, you get kind of unpredictable amounts of it. And of course, almost nobody eats organ meat either. So we get almost nothing in our diet. And studies have shown that the Western population is very, very clinically deficient in vitamin K27. Now, why does that matter? Well, because K27 is an essential nutrient that conducts certain functions that only K27 can conduct. And if you think about the functions that K27 conducts, and then you match that up with the amazing levels of deficiency that we have, it becomes really clear why certain conditions are continuing to increase in prevalence in the Western world, right? So number one, K27 is absolutely needed to put calcium on bones, right? So we all know that our bones are made up of calcium, and they're structured in this really beautiful honeycomb-like structure, which gives bones not only really great strength, but both tensile strength, and it also gives it compression strength, but it also allows the bones to be light so that we don't weigh 500 pounds as we're trying to walk around and hold up our body weight, right? Now that honeycomb structure is really critical, and the laying down of the bone of calcium on the bone in the proper way is conducted by cells called osteoblastic cells. Osteoblastic cells require activation by vitamin K27. Without activation by vitamin K27, in particular, a protein that they utilize called osteocalcin, if that activation doesn't occur, they cannot put calcium on bone properly, right? So now we've all heard of vitamin D's role in bone health and all that. People have been using it now for more than a decade for bone health. What vitamin D does is it actually allows the osteoblastic cells to release this protein that I'm talking about that's important for sticking calcium on the bones. Without that protein being released, you can't stick calcium on the bones. But the problem is the protein is released in an inactive form, and it doesn't actually work until vitamin K27 comes along, cleaves it, and activates it, right? So vitamin D and vitamin K2 play absolutely together in increasing and building bone strength. Now, the same thing on the other side that happens is as you're putting calcium on the bones, you also have to remove calcium from the arteries and the soft tissues. Because what happens with calcium when you consume it is that it's just a rock, right? It's a mineral. It doesn't know where to go in the body. In fact, calcium just swims around all throughout your vascular system. And in fact, if there's any damage anywhere in your vascular system, it'll actually stick to it, or it just starts sticking to soft tissue all throughout your body. That's why your body has a very specific protein in all of your vascular system called matrix GLA protein. And the only thing that this protein does is it removes calcium from your soft tissue and directs it back towards the bone, right? So your body has these checkpoints in it, because what tends to happen if you don't have the right nutrients, these proteins aren't working, you're going to get a lot of your calcium depositing on all your soft tissue, your vascular system, your collagen, your elastin, impacting your skin, in areas like your joints, and not actually making it to your bone, right? So what does that lead to? It leads to cardiovascular disease, and it leads to osteoporosis. It's merely a misdirection of calcium. But you have these two proteins that dictate all of that. Both of those proteins are vitamin K27 dependent proteins, right? So that's why when you look at the Rotterdam study, 4,800 patients over 10 years, they showed that even minimal intake of vitamin K2 at 45 micrograms per day cut cardiovascular mortality in half, right? Wow. Nothing else does that. There's no natural or synthetic compound that can reduce cardiovascular mortality by 50%, right? Statins, the number one drug for cardiovascular disease, reduces cardiovascular mortality by somewhere around 23 to 24%, right? And that is the most prescribed treatment for people at risk of cardiovascular disease. Vitamin K27 in the Rotterdam study and a whole bunch of other studies since then, and these are large-scale, long-term studies, cuts cardiovascular mortality in half. And then all these osteoporosis studies have been done. There are literally hundreds of osteoporosis studies on vitamin K2. It cuts hip fracture rates, it cuts femur fracture rates, all of these different types of osteoporotic fractures and bone damage that occurs by upwards of 90% in many of these individuals, right? So again, we're just directing this very critical mineral, calcium, into the right places of the body and not allowing it to settle in the wrong places and actually getting it to the bone. All of that is dependent on vitamin K2. Now, why D3 as well? Remember, D3 plays a role in increasing osteoblastic cells and osteocalcin. K2 comes along, activates it. So they play very nice together. In calcium in general, D3 increases calcium absorption, right? So you can actually bring the calcium in, and then K2 directs it to the right place. Right. So they work really well together. Now, there's many other things. I'll mention other indications for why these two work well together. But a very important aspect of calcium D3 vitamin D3 and vitamin K27 supplementation is the form of the vitamins, right? And whether or not they're stable. They're both relatively reactive compounds. K2, for example, can even be light sensitive. Just, exposure to light in the room or exposure to UV radiation is going to start deactivating vitamin K2. It's also a reactive compound, meaning it's got this carboxylating end of it, which has a very strong charge, so it can grab on to minerals and other things when it's in production or blending or encapsulating. And so it can deactivate pretty quickly. So one of the most important steps in vitamin K27 supplementation is to have an extremely well-tested and stable form of vitamin K2. Now, we worked on vitamin K2 for almost 6-7 years before launching it. And the reason it took that long is because we actually launched vitamin K2 as a drug in India with some really big pharma companies like Abbott Labs, like Sun Pharmaceuticals, Dr. Reddy's, which is a big pharmaceutical company in India, multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company. So in India and parts of Southeast Asia, our vitamin K27 was manufactured as and launched as a prescription drug. So that requires a lot more work ahead of time to prove things like stability, consistency in the manufacturing, quality, and all of that. And especially because it was a natural product. Right. You have to do even more work, right? So pharmaceutical companies are very comfortable with synthetic chemistry, right? It's a single molecule. You show all the synthetic steps. You disclose all of the reagents and solvents and all that you use. And then at the end, you come out with a very pure compound that's 99.9% pure, but it is synthetic, right? And it doesn't match natural things. Our goal was to launch natural K2 from fermentation into the prescription world in that part of the world. And so it took a lot to prove we knew everything that was happening in that fermentation mix, and that we could isolate the K2 in very high concentrations, and that isolated K2 is very stable and it's safe and there aren't any other byproducts, and all of those things had to be shown. So we have we are the largest producer of natural K2 in the world. And in numerous countries, our K2 is a prescription product. Fortunately, in the US, it's a supplement, which of course makes it more accessible and easy to use. But it's absolutely differentiated from everything else on the market in a very, very important, significant way. The other thing we did 5-6 years ago, as we started bringing K2 more prevalently into the US market as a supplement, is we started testing a lot of products on the market that had other K2 in it. As you would imagine, because I mentioned that K2 is so unstable, we tested it, and many of those products had a fourth or a fifth or 10th of the amount of K2 that's claimed on the label, because their product was degrading so fast, right? And so that's not really going to give you the benefit that you're hoping it would. Now, D3, D3, one of the things we wanted to do was kind of clean up the carrier system of D3, right? There's a lot of D3. I mean, D3 for the most part still comes from sheep's wool. There isn't a fermentation source of D3, but 99.9% of the D3 in the marketplace comes from the same kind of source. The only difference is what they use as a stabilizing and carrier system. We wanted to go with the most natural, simplified carrier system that you can. And then it also has to have in it antioxidant protection, because D3 has a risk of oxidation when it's sitting as a bulk raw ingredient and so on. So it's a really great, clean, non-GMO, natural source, but it has to have this antioxidant component to it, proving out its stability. And so our D3 and K2 match really quite well, and they're the highest grades of both of those ingredients on the marketplace.
Hey, and what's the form of vitamin D?
So this is the D3 itself. So what you can end up having is some companies will use D2 actually. And so you have the cholecalciferol, and then there are other versions in it which are D2 actually, technically, which are inactivated or non-active forms just yet, right? So in the body, you'll find both versions, but the D3 version, I believe it's cholecalciferol, is the active version of it. That's the most absorbed version. That's the version that's actually going to function in your cells. And that's a really important component to the D3 as well.
So I don't see it on the website, Kiran, and I know that it was supposed to be there, but I don't see it right now. So help me. Do you know if it is there?
We haven't put it up yet. And the reason for it is because we're still in the pre-sale mode.
Pre-sale mode. Okay.
So pre-order mode. And we're hoping to put it up there sometime this week.
Okay. So you guys are getting first awareness.
You guys are totally the first. We haven't even introduced this to our healthcare practitioners. Okay. But Siobhan is amazingly good at being persistent at getting all things first. So we said, okay, we're going to introduce it to your audience, and we're going to make it available for pre-sale. It'll ship within a few days, but this is new.
Okay.
And let me talk about a couple other things with this combination. So
hold on, because people are going to want to know, how do I get a hold of it, regardless of what else you tell us, because I know so many people are already in. So it's not on the website, but I'm going to share the link for pre-order into the chat. And when we resend this recording out, I will put it in the email. So sorry if you opened the email earlier. I did think it was on the site. So there was some miscommunication. Again, Mercury retrograde kicking me in the butt. And so I'll put it in the chat, and then you guys can have your first dibs. And certainly know that the 15% off that Kiran is offering for us right now is on the pre-order, as well as anything else that you decide to order on Microbiome Labs, I think through October 3rd. So let me get that to you. And where's my chat? Okay. I'm going to just pop it into everyone. Okay, keep going, Kiran. Go ahead. I can't wait to hear what you say next.
Okay, so and yeah, so as I mentioned, it is the cholecalciferol, which is the active version of D3, and then again, K2 is the K27 version, which is the most bioavailable version. It's the version with the highest long half-life in the body, and it is the storage version in the body as well. Now, many of you may hear, oh, you need K24. Right, there's some places that some companies that push K24 a lot. The problem with K24 is that there's no natural source of K24. So all the K24 in the market that you see is synthetic. And synthetic vitamins just give me the heebie-jeebies. And I'll explain why a little bit, right? Because if you have, and in some cases you don't have an option, you have to take a synthetic version. Okay, that's maybe better than not taking it at all. But if there is a natural version, let me explain why it's important to hone in on and focus on the natural version, right? So when you look at a molecule like vitamin K27, it's not a simple molecule. There's some complexity to it. There's a big quinone ring, right, which is a ring, and then there's a long tail of carbon and hydrogen, groups. These are like methyl groups at the end of the chain. Now, many of those carbons are called chiral centers, right? When something is a chiral center, what it means is at that bond, there can be a number of different three-dimensional structures to the bond. It's the same atoms. It's still same carbon, same nitrogen, same hydrogen. However, because chemistry has geometry to it, there's all these different configurations that those bonds can make, right? It's no different than having 3 or 4 Lego pieces, and they're the same pieces, but you can assemble them in very different three-dimensional shapes. And what tends to happen is nature tends to make one geometric shape of these molecules. But when you do a synthesis, you end up getting with what's called enantiomers, where you get a mixture of many different geometrical shapes of the bonds, because you are artificially putting these molecules together, right? And so what was realized back in the mid-'80s in synthetic chemistry, as it relates to prescription drugs, for example, is that when they were synthesizing molecules as a prescription drug, they were getting this mixture of geometric shapes. And the problem with that mixture is more often than not, and this is probably true 99% of the time, is one of those geometric shapes functions. The rest of them either don't function or can actually be very toxic. Right? Again, same distribution of atoms, but they're assembled a little bit differently, right? And so that became a big problem. And since the late 80s, the FDA will not allow a drug to go into market that has a mix of geometrical shapes. That's called chirally pure molecules, right? And when there's a mix, it's called enantiomeric mix. I don't expect you to remember these things, but
because it's
because if you want to nerd out, maybe you'll re-listen to this and do that. But the FDA is very clear that when you synthesize a molecule, you will 100% of the time get all of these different shapes, and that most of those shapes are either not going to function or maybe even be toxigenic, right? And so you have to identify of all of the different geometries which one it is that actually functions, and then isolate that from the mixture, right? And that is arguably one of the hardest and most expensive steps of any sort of drug manufacturing in terms of the manufacturing process. Now, when a supplement company, who's not under that kind of scrutiny by the FDA, manufactures a synthetic vitamin, they don't do all of those steps to test all of those mixtures, all of those geometric differences, right? And then isolate the only one that works, the one that looks like the natural compound. They don't do that, right? And so in a given synthetic vitamin, you can have upwards of 36 different versions of the molecule. In a synthetic K2, for example, right? So when you're taking a synthetic vitamin like that, and some chemical company has assembled that molecule, you're likely getting upwards of 36 different versions of that, in which case one of those 36 actually functions, the other 35, you don't really know what it does, right? And that's why these synthetic vitamins give me a bit of the heebie-jeebies, because none of these companies, I can assure you, are isolating each of those geometric shapes and testing them for safety, efficacy, and so on, or at least identifying them and removing them all. They're not doing that, right? So a synthetic vitamin is problematic. And the FDA is also very clear that synthetic versions of natural compounds are not equivalent. So you'll get a lot of companies because they can make it much cheaper when they synthetically produce it, and they'll produce it in places like China, and they'll produce it in Eastern Europe, and they have low production costs there. They'll use all kinds of noxious chemistries in there. They'll use all kinds of hexanes and other noxious chemicals as part of the solvent system. And then you'll be taking it as a health and wellness product, right? So
Thanks.
Yeah, so be careful. K24, if you see it in there, lots of companies push that you need K24 and K27, but that's absolutely not true, because K27 is what's absorbed in the gut, is what's stored in the body naturally. And guess what? Where your cells need K24, they know how to convert K27 to K24. But then there's parts of the body that need K27, there's no conversion back from K24 to K27. So you need to have K27 as the primary version of it. We started pioneering a lot of patented areas on K27, because what was very well known in K27 was that it's absolutely critical for bone health, as I described, and it's absolutely critical for heart health. We started doing work on the mitochondria and on neurological health as well, because we asked a simple question. Microbes make K27 at very high levels, right? Microbes like bacillus, our favorite spores, they make K27 at the highest natural levels you find it in nature. So then the big question is, they don't have vascular systems, they don't have bones. What are they using K2 for, right? Why are they making it so much? And as it turns out, they use it for energy production. Remember, bacteria are like little mitochondria, right? In fact, all our mitochondria in our cells are all ancient bacteria. And so we started doing studies on, does K27 impact our mitochondria? We did it with the University of Texas. And we found, of course, that when you add K27 to a human mitochondria cell, or a human cell, and then it utilizes it within the mitochondria, it increases energy output of that cell by almost 40%.
Wow.
Right? 40%. It was absolutely phenomenal. And we filed and received global patents on this discovery.
Wow.
Right?
That's huge. So, listen, we only have about 15 minutes, and we have so many questions. And by the way, the form isn't working right this second, so bear with us. We will send you out an email that says, hey, it's live on the site, or if we fix the form, it'll be within the next few days. Okay, but we will send this recording out. And so I need to get to some of these questions. What's the supplementation ratio of D3 to K2?
So what we're finding, ideally, it's about 200 micrograms of K2 to 5,000 IUs of D3. Right, so that's where we are with the ratio. So in this product, every capsule comes with 200 micrograms of K2 and 5,000 IUs of D3 in it. It's a 60 cap bottle, so it actually will last you 2 months, unless there's a reason for you to take higher of each. There's no real upper limit for K2. I take as much as 600 micrograms a day because I do all kinds of crazy things and put demands on my body. But 200 micrograms is a very, very good, solid dose for vitamin K27 that'll cover most of your body's needs for vitamin K27. And 5,000 IUs of vitamin D3 is pretty good, especially considering that you're probably getting some D3 from sunshine, from foods, fortified foods, and so on.
So there is one on the website that is the megaquinone, but no D, it's just the K27. Yeah. That is fantastic, and everything he's been talking about K2. However, there is one coming that has the vitamin D in it if you want to do that combination.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the exact way to order is to go ahead and go to Microbiome Labs right now and order Megaspore or whatever else you want at 15% off. And then when the product is available, that is the vitamin D and K2, it will be on there. And so just keep reading the emails because we'll keep you posted live.
Yeah, and we'll keep this coupon available until the product is out so you can use it on the product.
And then a few days after, I hope. So yeah. Thank you.
Exactly. And one more thing I want to mention, this product here is pound for pound, the best price value for that level of K2 and D3 in a single product. And that was one of our goals here, because to us, it's absolutely important for everybody. I don't care what age or what sex or gender you are. Everybody needs to supplement with K2 and D3. These are two of the most quintessential supplements. There's so many studies of the two and so important. So we wanted to make it as affordable and efficient as possible.
It's very affordable.
Do it every day, and that's critically important.
I appreciate that. And what if you already have osteoporosis? You've been diagnosed.
Yep. So if you're osteoporotic or you're in osteopenia, for example, which is early stages of osteoporosis, it's never too late to reduce bone resorption, right? So what tends to happen is after you get past the age of 30, it becomes hard to build bone. We just don't build bone as much as we used to. We still can to some degree. And one of the stimuli for building bone is going to be impact or weight-bearing exercises, right? So whether you're walking and you're doing some stairs, or you're lifting a little bit of weights, or you're doing something light, if you will, but some degree of weight-bearing exercise will stimulate some bone rebuilding, but the bone rebuilding becomes much, much slower after the age of 30. But what does increase after the age of 30 is bone resorption, which is your body pulling calcium off the bones to use it for other things, right? Because the bones are also a depository of calcium. So bone resorption is actually, for women, for example, is slowed down by estrogen. And so as you reach perimenopause and then you go into postmenopausal area and estrogen levels go down, your bone resorption increases dramatically. And that's why for women, you end up with much higher osteoporosis and cardiovascular risk after menopause, because calcium is now being pulled out of your bones actively. And because it's not in your bones, it's circulating everywhere and depositing in your arteries, right? And so vitamin K27 inhibits or slows down bone resorption as well. So it slows down the loss of bone, and it does support the rebuilding of bone, right? So it doesn't matter if you're already osteoporotic. It'll be absolutely beneficial still. And whatever osteoporosis medication your doctor has you on, whether it's Fosamax or one of the other ones, there is no contraindication with K2.
And what about warfarin?
Yeah, so warfarin is a blood thinner. Warfarin is counterindicated with vitamin K1, right? Okay. Now, in the megaquinone, our original product, there is K1 in there to help with some of the K2 absorption. So you'd want to be cautious if you're using that product. You work with your doctor on it. In fact, it can be helpful in some ways, but you would absolutely have to work with your doctor on it. On this product, it's only K2. There's no K1, so it doesn't really have an impact on your warfarin dose. Now, if you want to be extra cautious, let your doctor know there's something easy to measure, which you probably already do, called PTN INR, and you can measure your prothrombin INR, which most people who are on warfarin do that on a somewhat regular basis, to make sure that you're within the ranges you want to be in. That's just to be overly cautious, right?
Cautious. It's a great idea. Can you comment on the use of K2 for someone using Coumadin?
Yeah, so same thing. So Coumadin and warfarin are the same. So they're Coumadin, I think, is a maybe a brand name of the same drug. So they are both vitamin K antagonist blood thinners, which means that they antagonize the function of vitamin K, but it's K1 in the liver where you form blood clots, right? Where you form clotting factors. So that's how they stop you from clotting, is they interfere the clotting process by inhibiting vitamin K1. Now, that's all happening in the liver. K2 doesn't function in that. K2 functions outside the liver. Now, also keep in mind that there's all of these new age blood thinners that aren't vitamin K dependent. So that's, if you're on the old school Coumadin and warfarin, which is obviously the old school rat poison, you might want to talk to your doctor about maybe thinking about the new generation of blood thinners that exist. There are new prescription blood thinners that are not vitamin K dependent.
Okay. All right. We've got to go a little bit faster. And this is about what I've seen all over the internet. and my friend Phoebe Lupine had 1 million people watch her TikTok about this, which is, do you need to take something fatty into your system when you're taking this, your particular vitamin D and K?
Yeah. So both vitamin K2 and D3 are fat soluble vitamins, and they do absorb a little bit better if there's some sort of fat in your in the food or whatever you're drinking, consuming, because it triggers some of the fat transportation in the gut, right? However, that being said, we have done a study of doing it even with orange juice. And orange juice has almost no fat in it at all, but even that was still enough to stimulate, because both vitamin D3 and K2 have what we call specific transport in the gut, meaning there are transporters that look for these molecules because they're so important. So when you take it in, it'll automatically do that. It'll automatically get transported. But if you can eat a little something with it, even with a teeny bit of fat, it may enhance the absorption to some degree.
So what is the exact name of the product again? Megaquinone D3K2?
Yep, it's Megaquin D3. That's it.
That's it. Megaquin
D3.
If you just join, yeah, go ahead.
I had just pulled up the label. Let me do that so people can see it. I can show you.
You guys, it's not quite available yet. We're going to send you a form for pre-order if I get the form fixed. If not, we'll just send you an email saying, hey, it's on the site, go.
Right. Let's see.
Okay, it's kind of hard to see. It's kind of hard to see. Okay, but look for that when you get to the site. It's not there yet. Okay.
Quinn D3. Yeah.
Got it. So when let's talk about the Mega 3, this product with your gut health. So you're just touched on it. By the way, I did get 3 people who wrote me that I could find this form of vitamin D and K2 in the United States, but I couldn't find it when I was looking for it. So I was very glad. So it's not as, I'm glad 3 people knew about it, but I sent to like 250,000 people. So I appreciated the return, but the bottom line,
and keep in mind,
Microbiome Labs.
There is a form of this, but the K2 in there is synthetic. So keep that in mind. And they don't disclose it. They won't say on the label synthetic K2, right? So they try to hide it because they know that people get a little wary of that. So keep that in mind. As far as I know, this is the only formulation with these 2 sources of vitamin D3 and K2 at this dose where both of them are natural.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Bottom line question, before you talk about the gut, because we did also have a lot of people come in more recently, is who should take this exactly? Like, what is this good for? Okay, we've heard about D3 in relation to COVID. We've heard about D3 in relation to our bones. We've heard about it in relation to our mental health. And if you haven't, please get in on that because it is so powerful for mental health. And when I had lower vitamin D, I just was like so paranoid of the sun, too paranoid. And my D levels got quite low. And a lot of practitioners that I was working with were like, hey, you got to get those up there. And then I got them up there. And then they're like, yeah, but it's not optimal, Siobhan. So what my PCP was saying was optimal wasn't actually. So now they're up and I can't wait to switch to yours because I am doing all this stuff separately. And now I'm going to have it all in one.
In one, yeah.
Yeah. So who is it for? And then how does it impact our gut?
Yeah, so who it's for is if you have bones, if you have a heart, if you have a vascular system, if you have neurons, if you have a brain and an immune system, you absolutely need it, right? I can't stress enough that these 2 ingredients are not like enhancers of function. They are facilitators of function, meaning without them, you don't facilitate these basic functions of building bones, slowing down bone resorption, removing calcium from arteries, regenerating the nerves and increasing energy production in the nerves, driving enough energy formation for the brain, activating the immune system in the proper way, modulating the immune response and reducing inflammatory responses. I mean, you cannot say enough about the critical things that these 2 ingredients do. And I could tell you that there are numerous chronic illnesses that are associated with having a deficiency in one of these 2, if not both of these ingredients, right? I mentioned the Rotterdam study, 4,800 patients over 10 years, 25% reduction in all-cause mortality by just taking 45 micrograms a day of K2, right? That means all-cause mortality. That means dying from any kind of disease. And the reason for that is because K2 is an omnipotent vitamin, meaning it works in so many systems in the body. It's critically important for so many systems. And when it's not present, those systems suffer and start to fall apart. And we get none of it in our diet, right? 95+% of us are clinically deficient in these nutrients. So this to me is like underlying, importance of supplementation.
What have you become familiar with the 45,000 micrograms a day for osteoporotic women?
For D3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's saying of K2, or he's saying of K2. RD's saying K2.
No. Oh, 45,000. Yes. So that's probably K24. So remember, K24 is a synthetic molecule. And it's very unstable, and it has a half-life of around 3.5 hours in the body versus K27, which has a half-life of 72 hours. And in Japan, K24 has been a prescription drug for osteoporosis. However, for the most part, they deliver it via injection direct into your vascular system, right? Because it's so unstable, going through the gut and all that is a problem. And they dose it in those high doses. 45, 50,000 micrograms, whereas K27 at 100 or 200 micrograms can do the exact same thing, as has shown in probably 50 published studies. So unless you're going to a doctor to get a K24 drug, which is actually not available in the US, then K27 is really your option.
Wow. All right. Talk about it in the gut, and then we have to go because I promised Karen we'd be done at 3:45 Eastern time. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everybody. I did my best to get as many questions as possible. But how does it impact our gut health?
Yeah, so microbes use a lot of K2. We know that, right? And because they produce a lot of K2. So there is an impact on the overall kind of diversity and functionality of your gut microbiome when you have adequate amounts of vitamin K27 in your gut. It is an energy source for microbes. There's communication components to it. There's modulation of the immune system in the mucosa. So it plays a role in the gut as well. And we have some early information on circulatory improvements in the gut itself. Because remember, the gut lining needs to be fed blood all the time to repair, regenerate, absorb nutrients and all of that. The arterial circulation to the gut can start to become compromised and calcified in people that have inadequate levels of vitamin K2 and possibly D3 as well. Just like your heart and the vessels that surround your heart get calcified and have inadequate blood supply, so can your gut. Your gut needs really adequate blood supply. So there is a component of the function of K2 in the blood supply of your GI tract, which is also critically important. Lastly, I would recommend another product that works synergistically well with this, and this goes back to that, do you want some fat in your absorption of this product? If you use the gut-specific fish oil with the K2, then you've got adequate amount of lipids in the gut-specific fish oil, and that'll enhance the absorption of K2 and D3. But then they also have very complementary functions because the gut-specific fish oil reduces inflammation in the GI lining. That's what it's designed to do. And inflammation in the GI lining negates or reduces absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. That becomes one of the biggest issues for people with, for example, celiac disease that have a lot of inflammation in the lining of the gut. They tend to suffer from having very low levels of fat-soluble vitamins in the body because they can't absorb it through their gut. So they end up with brittle bones, brittle teeth, bad skin, and all kinds of osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease at an increased rate, all because they cannot absorb these fat-soluble vitamins through their inflamed gut. So pairing this with the gut-specific fish oil can be a really, really beneficial combination.
So they do have the fish oil that he's talking about at Microbiome Labs, and you could get the 15% off on that too. Yeah. Okay, literally, I have to go. Hold on. So Rhonda's saying it says that D is 100 micrograms and K2 is 100 micrograms. Is that right? Are you looking at the right thing, Rhonda?
She may not be. So D should be 5,000 IUs.
Yeah.
So it may be 100 micrograms of the molecule, but when you convert that to vitamin D activity, it's 5,000 IUs.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So vitamin D, remember, is expressed in international units in IUs, not in micrograms, which is weight. So it's actually 125 micrograms in weight, which converts to 5,000 IUs of activity.
If someone's on an immunosuppressant, is there any problem taking this?
No, not on an immunosuppressant. Like if they're on a biologic or something for
Right.
Crohn's or colitis, there's no contraindication. Always check with your doctor to be sure, of any medical issues, contraindications, but there isn't any. Yeah. But there isn't anything known.
Bottom line is, can you take too much vitamin D and K2?
So here's a really interesting thing. You can absolutely take too much vitamin D. Right? There is a condition called hypervitaminosis D. What happens with hypervitaminosis D is it puts your body into a clinically critical vitamin K deficiency. So you can take too much D if you're not taking it with K, because remember, vitamin D releases all of these proteins, for example, osteocalcin, that vitamin K2 has to activate. So if all you're doing is releasing the protein and you're using up all your vitamin K store to activate it, you'll go into severe vitamin K2 deficiency. So hypervitaminosis D, the condition of taking too much vitamin D, is classified as having hypercalcinemia, meaning having too much calcium in your soft tissue and arteries, which is exactly what happens when you have severe deficiency of K2. Well, if you take them both together, you don't go overboard with the D because the K2 is there to counterbalance it, right? And there's no overdose on vitamin K2 by itself. We've done the LD50 test, the toxicity test. We do not find an upper limit.
Okay. All right. I know there's more. We will continue this conversation. We have Kiran again next month. Thank goodness. He's so generous with his discounts and with his time. This is so special. Thank you all so much for coming. I'll send you out the replay. Thank you, Kiran. I'll talk to you later.
Bye, everybody.
Take care. Keep up the great work.
Thanks.
Earlier today, I had a chance to call Kiran to confirm our time because I had it wrong because I'm having a really weird day. But the bottom line is that he has so much up his sleeve. He's been working on this for 5 or 6 years. He told me that he originally got into the health food and health industry and supplement space because of K2. You heard him say that before, where he worked in a Japanese research environment for K2, and it was as a prescription. So really interesting. I hope you'll embrace this and check into it for yourself. I hope you'll check out Megaspore. If you do, remember, you want to start very, very slowly, teeny tiny baby, like surprisingly slowly dose. You open the capsule, a couple little sprinkles, and build up. Someone's asking, like, how I've taken the prebiotic, I'm just started and I'm bloated. This is really powerful stuff, and it is impacting your snowflake of a microbiome, and everyone is different. I have other friends who take it. They're like, I feel good. Oh my gosh, I feel great. And no bloating for me. It's gone away. Other people take it, and in the beginning, they do experience bloating. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you all for coming. He's so great. My pleasure. And we do have a lot more in the coffers before the year is over. I literally have thought to myself, it's too much, Siobhan. And then I've thought to myself, are you kidding? There are billions of people that need to be healed on the planet. And I'm doing my part to make sure I get as much information out as soon as possible. So come in and hang out with us, learn, absorb what you can, go back and watch the replays in the Facebook group if you aren't in there, and certainly watch the recordings. And also, if it's too much, then take a break and come back later. But we love having you, and we love spending time with you. And I really appreciate you taking valuable, precious time out of your day to spend to be with me and Kiran. But also, I want to acknowledge you for taking such good care of yourself, because I know it can be confrontational. It can be hard. You have a lot of other things going on, and you also have a mission on the planet. And if you are well, it's going to be easier for you to accomplish that. So my hats off to you and my deep respect, and congratulations as a fellow traveler. So thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you later. Clarissa, thank you for being here. And I'll talk to you later, everyone. Thanks. Watch for the emails for the updated release of this new product, because it's not on the website yet. So stand by. Hopefully by the time you're hearing this recording, read the text above and below because it will say whether or not it's available for sale. Okay, thanks, bye. All right.